Hello, 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 hello. What's going on, everybody? This is G. You are watching Allastrology. And we got a chart on the screen that will hopefully help clarify some of the things I always, you always hear me referencing in the different videos, the weekly videos that I do. This is just to kind of give us a basic look at the retrograde planets, because there's a Mercury retrograde, a Mars retrograde, a Jupiter retrograde, and of course, Saturn is still in the middle of a retrograde right now. So, with all the retrogrades and all the things that are occurring, I wanted to get this video out before the November election for the United States, because this is the US's chart. This isn't to be a predicative tool, but it can at least give us an idea of like the energy and how the retrogrades are extremely personal for the US. Sometimes retrogrades happen and you see it affecting friends, other people but it's not such a big deal for you maybe, right? Well, that's because there's objects at specific points that really matter. Okay? And in this chart, the US, just at least knowing where some of these planets are retrograding, like we'll begin with Mercury on the ascendant. Mercury retrograde happens on the United States ascendant. So Mercury is the information, is the communication. It's what we're talking and thinking about. It is the details. It's the news. When you have the retrograde, it's going over the details. It's going back to get some details, to get some data, some information, right? It doesn't have all of what it needs to make a decision. And that's key with Mercury, choices and options, because I'm going to make a decision. I want to make a decision, or I have to make a decision, right? When we have to make a decision, we want to usually kind of be informed before we make a decision, right? You don't just take the first offer that comes along, especially if it's a major decision. You want to have a couple people come by, give you some estimates. That's just a really simplistic view of it. But the ascendant for a country is the ascendant, same as for a human being. It's how we appear, right? It's the appearance of the country. Sagittarius on the ascendant. So what does that mean? Well, think of Sagittarius and all the different keywords, right? They can kind of be looked up. You think Jupiter, so it can be like the authority figure. There can be some of that. Somebody who is cultured, wise, someone who understands a little bit of this, understands a little bit of that. It's the big picture. It's not the details in as far as the division and the minutia and the separation of things, because it's the big picture. It's Jupiter. It includes the whole forest, right? We think of the forest or the tree, the forest and the trees in the forest. And we think of how Jupiter might not see each individual tree because it says, oh, but we're all together, and it sees the clump and it says, but this is the group. I understand it. I see what's happening to the group, to the unity. And so there's something there about philosophy, life philosophies, spirituality, religion, justice, the judicial system. This is all Saggy and Jupiter keywords. And, if you talk to people who live in other countries, they kind of laugh at the United States. I've heard, whether it's on videos or just people that I chat with, will say things like, yeah, that's the US, man. They are all about lawyering up and suing people, court cases, like that's the United States. And so that's how we appear, right? But what else can it mean? Think of Sagittarius. What else? Religious leaders? Freedom. Think about the founding of the country. What was important? To be able to have freedom of religion. If you want to practice, that's fine. If you don't want to practice a religion, if you don't follow a faith, that's fine too. That's Jupiter. It encompasses all of it. Even though it's religion and spirituality, it's the big picture. It really is the melting pot, because Jupiter, Sagittarius, is immigrants. right? Those of us here, alive, breathing, speaking, your ancestors, how many of you can tell me who are watching this video that your original ancestors are from this country, right? So we think of how we can go back in our family lineage, even though there might be some of you who's had family roots here for hundreds of years. That's possible. But the majority of us came across those waters, and that's Jupiter too. Came across those waters. Before the airplane, we had to take the boat across the pond, and that's what we did, right? And before that, people walked. People had smaller boats and then had to walk, right? So Jupiter and Sagittarius on the descendant, 12 degrees matters. That is truly about understanding. That is truly about we are all together in this. It's unity. It's, I want peace. It can even be a sign of surrender. We think of that 12 degrees, think of Neptune, think of Pisces, right? Think of, again, spirituality. But what about public figures? Yes. So we got public figures, which in the US, judges for sure, Supreme Court justices, but public figures, as in politicians, but even artists and musicians. Think Jupiter, the ancient ruler of Saggy, but also ancient ruler of Pisces, and it's the degree of Pisces. That's the Pisces degree right there. Okay. So it's kind of fascinating to see the chart, to see that this is this country and that freedom is important. Freedom of belief, freedom of speech, those are important. But we are at a crossroads in this country where the difference of freedom of speech and the difference of hate speech, the difference of intentional speech to harm, whether I'm physically going to do the harm or I'm trying to get somebody else to do the harm or I'm just inflaming people, there's a difference, right? And justice and the justice system, well, there's rules for things. And there might be things that we never really faced as a country that we might have to create rules for because we're kind of a new territory. So the Mercury retrograde happens. It starts November 26th and it goes to the 15th of December. Now, the thing is Mercury is famously known for being a factor before the retrograde begins. It's a factor before the retrograde begins. And I say this because we have an election, right? So the degrees of the shadow zone are going to be super important. And the degrees of the shadow zone are marked right there, right? So it's the 6 degrees of Saggy all the way to the 22 degrees. I have it written here too. I didn't even know that. I made this chart a couple weeks ago. 6 degrees of Saggy to 22 degrees of Saggy. All right. Now, on November 11th, and I already did do a weekly video. And I'm not sure when you're seeing that video or when you'll see this one in comparison to that one, but the Mercury will not be at 6 degrees. She will not be within the shadow zone, but she will be conjunct it. She's like at 4-5 degrees on the day of the election. Okay. Look what's there in the United States chart. Humea. So beliefs is big and the future is big. That's a couple of the keywords I didn't mention with Sagittarius. But the beliefs about my future, the beliefs about justice, the beliefs about my freedom. And Humea is known to restore something. That's what she does. After there's been a breakdown and a destruction, Humea is known to restore something. Okay, so restore all the Sagittarius keywords. Interesting, it's in Leo energy because it's at 5 degrees. So laughter, joy, making jokes, children, fun. Think of Leo energy and just the ability to be able to crack jokes or to have some humor. And I'm going to use this as an excuse, or I'm not as an example. Jupiter, man, I'm going to use this as an example. Um, Remember the TV show, the sitcom All in the Family? Well, I didn't realize this, but some folks, I guess nowadays, they might be seeing the show for the first time, or they used to watch it when it first aired. Uh, it's an old show. I think just about maybe not everybody's dead, but either way, Norman Lear, he created that show to talk about difficult topics, to talk about politics and race, and to talk about racism and sexism and inequalities within our society. But he does it in a way where the father of the family, Archie, is a bigot, and he is racist. He is sexist. And he's these things, but yet the family loves him anyway, even though he's literally, a pain in their ass, right? Because deep down, Archie does have some redeeming qualities, but it doesn't mean that he's not a racist or a sexist. But they learn how to laugh and how to poke jokes and how to tolerate him. And maybe tolerate's not a great word for someone that's your dad and that you have to live with, but they make it work by staying sane and being able to maybe be a little sarcastic, or to be able to, try to coddle him like a child, because that's kind of what they have to do at points in time, but to try to coddle him where he can kind of see that he uses words that are harmful and that are disrespectful, downright disrespectful, the name calling. Archie, in using his harmful words and in his unbalanced thinking, because it's all about it's my way or the highway, that there are so many people who in present day embrace the way he talks, who embrace his mindset. Because back in the day when we watched that program, we all saw Archie for who he was. We didn't cheer for Archie. We recognized he was being disrespectful. He was kicking down at others because of their nationality, because of someone's a female, or because somebody was, one of those, as he would say, right? Or whatever his keywords were. But the beliefs is huge, and the differences of a belief and opinions and judgment. And there used to be a saying too that we used to say all the time that we were taught as kids. Well, I shouldn't say taught, but um, if you had an opinion about something, right? Opinions were not valued. One of the quick comebacks always were, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Like, that was such a common theme back then. And the thing is that we are now at a cycle in our time, in our lives, and then in our period of evolution, basically, where we are recognizing the individuals. And because it might take an extreme swing, we have other people, whoever those others are, the Archie Bunkers of the world, we'll put it like that, who are angered by it and who are pissed off and who do additional name calling, and so it's so unnecessary. Just honor that everybody's different and get over it. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's hard to say, and probably it belittles it when I say to get over it, because, during the pandemic, we all had different beliefs and different views, and our beliefs and different views, people felt, they were life threatening. They were literally what you believe could be damaging to my health and my well-being, and vice versa. So it really became like we felt we were at war with each other. And then anyway, we won't get into anything else in terms of that. But that's to kind of give you a behind the scenes deep dive on Mercury and the retrograde, and the retrograde in it going through Sagittarius at those degrees. First house ascendant. Remember that. This is the United States, how they appear. Okay. How they appear. Remember, Sagittarius, I will mention this. Sagittarius is a bit dreamy, folks. It rules Pisces. So it can be a little dreamy. It might not be able to see so clearly. It might be a little delusional, possibly, right? A little bit fantastical. Some would say very optimistic and adventurous. They have an adventurous type of spirit, and that, they have like, United States is known to have like that can-do attitude. For sure. United States has Aries energy in their 4th house, right? Can-do attitude. We're going to fight for this. That's the US. Very youthful and we'll try again, right? But when you have that 4th house and that trine to more fire, there just might be some things, especially with Pisces in the 3rd. There might be some things, some subconscious beliefs that we didn't know we held. And if we did know that we held those beliefs, well, there might have to be some changes in the thoughts, right? And in the subconscious. But for sure, the pandemic and the following years, I would think, opened some eyes. And that's the whole point of all the crazy crap that we've been going through. Take a look at Mars. Mars does a retrograde in Cancer. I mentioned this in one of the recent videos. And there's the United States 8th house cusp line at 16 degrees. The retrograde goes from 6 degrees of Leo, 6 degrees of Leo, and it retrogrades back to 17 degrees of Cancer energy. All right. So that's all in their 8th house. Emotions and the past and the wounds and the vulnerabilities, the deep psychology again, because with that Mercury retrograde, a few degrees of that retrograde are in their 12th house, and 6 degrees from 0 to 12 degrees is in the subconscious of the United States. So we think foreigners, foreign lands, foreign countries, foreign languages. And remember, Jupiter rules Pisces and also Sagittarius. So there's a lot of strong Jupiter qualities, and Neptune for that matter, especially within the first 11 degrees of Sagittarius. And that matters because we're talking about the first 6 degrees of Leo, where that retrograde occurs, and then goes back all the way into Cancer. 8th house. So far the commonalities are the 8th house and the 12th house. Those two are common, right? The subconscious and the past. And then, and I'm sure you saw where their natal Mercury was. You see that? In Cancer energy. And it's a Mercury retrograde going on November to December. Right. So the Mars retrograde, December 6th to February 24th, Mercury and Mars are retrograding at the same time, because this does not end till December 15th for the Mercury retrograde. You see? So there's a deep connection with Mercury in Cancer in their 8th house and Mars retrograding there. And so that brings me to Jupiter. The Jupiter retrograde happens October 9th to February 4th. Happens in Gemini energy. So let's go look at their Gemini energy. Oh my, there's their Gemini, and look what's there. They have Mars in Gemini, their natal chart at 21 degrees. And look where the retrograde occurs, between 11 and 21 degrees. Jupiter's retrograde is between 11 and 21 degrees. So you see the Mars retrograde, the Mercury retrograde, and the Jupiter retrograde. Partnerships. Who will be the partner? Remember, Jupiter is a big deal. And remember, Jupiter rules the ascendant. You follow? So it's super powerful and personal. 7th house partnerships, personal and professional. The 8th house, the wounds of the past. Feminine energy is strong here. Feminine energy is very strong. There's 17 degrees. I'm sorry, more than 17 degrees. There is 17 to 30 degrees. So 15 degrees plus their retrograde and vertex, Mercury conjunct vertex in the natal chart. And part of fortune at 26. And where Mars begins its retrograde is the United States North Node. The future. Feminine energy. The future. Masculine energy. It is 6 degrees, so the details matter. The health of the country, but the health of the wounds of the country matter because it's the eighth house, and it's health because it's Virgo, and it's the details, the day-to-day routines, the service industry, people who usually don't matter so much, people who we think belong in the kitchen, possibly even at 6 degrees, right? We think of people who are picking the vegetables, the janitors, the nurses, the health, people who are in the non-glamorous industry, people who clean the home, the gardening, the gardeners. But there's a lot of different ways we see service people in our community, right? Streets and sanitation, the garbage people who pick up your garbage. Like, what would you do if these people didn't exist? Life would be very difficult and our health would probably be messed up. 6 degrees, Virgo energy. It strives for perfection because it's Virgo. It might be a little bit on the critical side because it's the Virgo degree, but it's the future of the country because it's the North Node. It's where we're headed. Remember, Leo, children, fun, joy, creativity, and laughter. That's Leo energy. The Mars at 21 in Gemini, the 21 degree is Jupiter. 21 degrees is a Jupiter degree. Not making this stuff up. It's just what it is. And that's the Jupiter retrograde, which starts October 9th and retrogrades all the way until February 4th. All right. Now, with all that said, the last thing we're going to pinpoint is Saturn. Saturn's doing a retrograde in the United States, third house. It's Saturn in Pisces. I got the big Saturn drawn in here. It goes from 19 degrees to 12 degrees. That's where it retrogrades, from 19 to 12. It began in June, the end of June. Saturn is a serious energy. It says you need to think about your long-term goals. You need to think about what you're building. You need to consider your long-term financial stability. You need to be more serious. You need to sober up. Like, that's Saturn. Duty, responsibility. Very serious, might feel heavy even. I think it's been a blessing when it goes retrograde in Pisces because Saturn doesn't have a lot of power on its own in Pisces. Pisces is opposite of Saturn. It's non-tangible. It's the 5D. It's I can't hold it in my hand. That's Pisces. But Saturn is material and tangible. I can hold it in my hand. It's like iron. It's hard. All right. So that's why it's heavy. You think of Atlas holding the world on his back, on his shoulder, and being burdened by all the weight of the world. Between 12 and 19 is the retrograde. All right. The retrograde ends November 15th after the election. So if we back this chart up and take a look at some of the dates on here, okay, we can kind of see the sobering effect of Saturn in the third house, the mind of the United States, the sobering effect of politicians and public figures of Hollywood. We lost a lot of people, it seems like, a lot of stars, a lot of performers, actors, actresses. That's Pisces. But it's also religion and spirituality. A lot of spiritual testing because of the burden. A lot of realities where people don't, I think they feel probably not as connected, possibly. Of course, this isn't a blanket statement for everybody. It's specifically for these degrees between 19 and 12 degrees, or 12 and 19 degrees. You might feel a little bit like you've lost a little bit of hope, or you're like, I don't even, I have reservations. I have doubts about my future. I don't even feel connected to source anymore, or to God or Yahweh, or, whatever your divine is, if that's, if you believe in that. And that's a big part too. A big factor is the religion and the faith, the understanding and forgiveness, Pisces energy. With Saturn there, And it retrograding, we're not going to be as forgiving. We're not going to be as understanding. So when the retrograde ends, hopefully the sobering effect helped. And then hopefully there can be some understanding. Hopefully there can be a little bit more unifying once the retrograde ends on November 15th. So you see the mind of the United States, a big factor. Decisions, choices, very cloudy, a lot to do with the past. There's Nessus and Sedna there. Sirius is there. So we satisfy ourselves possibly with, with all Piscean things, which can be substances and dreams and fantasies. I need that fantasy, right? Because it's how I feel nurtured. I need to believe it's how I feel nurtured. And then, of course, firearms in the United States, but we see here Aries in the 4th house. Mars rules Aries. That's the soldier. That's the person that carries a weapon. 4th house is your emotional security. And in the U.S., folks, weapons are never going to leave. Okay, we're always going to have them. We're just asking for some safety measures and laws, some red flag laws put in place for high-risk people and to keep our effing children safe. The connection to the planets, and did I tell you about America, the symbol at 27 degrees in business, in diplomacy? Did you see the 27 degrees? And of course, the United States moon, 27 degrees in Aquarius, a very strong trine, but that's got nothing to do with these particular retrogrades, because they're not at the degrees. They're outside of the degrees. However, Jupiter at the degrees that it's trining in the 10th house of long-term goals and ambitions and business partnerships, we do have Juno at 20. Juno at 20 and Saturn at 14. So Jupiter trining these, we're thinking really seriously about our long-term goals and ambitions. All right, it's not a joke. We're very serious about it with the Saturn in its retrograde, for sure, and partnerships. So a lot of lawyers, a lot of stuff happening with lawyers and the justice system, because that is the courtroom and also the folks that are supposed to represent us, the people who are in the House of Representatives, the people who are in the Senate, the people who are there to represent their constituents. There's a lot of seriousness here in terms of thinking, am I being represented or am I being ruled over? So this was just to give you that rundown of the planets, where they're located in the U.S.'s chart. And I think it's a nice accompaniment, whatever that word is, video to go along with a lot of the retrograde videos I've done where I'm always referencing the U.S.'s chart. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate your time. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.